How's it going, ladies and Bruce's? I'm Bobby Sixkilla and welcome back to Sekimeiya. That soundtrack in the background is scaring the shit out of me, man. That background noise. I keep thinking there's something going on out there, but it's just in the music and it's freaking me out, man. Ugh. Anyway, what are we doing again? Oh yeah, we're waiting for the time to be up. We're just sitting here in the crystal room, chilling out until the time's up so we can leave. Let's carry on. It's 1 o'clock. So I'd been reading the time out loud every half hour. Rather than comforting us, it made things drag on. I think I'm pretty tired again just by sitting down for so long. After a while, Sai spoke again. Go to the bathroom. Everyone watched him stand up, but the silence remained as he left the room. He'd be sitting for a long time, so it wasn't reasonable to stop him. Sai had practically parked in front of the door, but the atmosphere hadn't changed with him gone. The concern began when a few minutes had passed and he hadn't returned yet. I immediately considered the possibility that he had an ulterior motive, but everyone else took longer to reach that idea. Where exactly did Sai go? Do you think he was lying? It's been a long time since he left. Don't think about him. If he doesn't want to come back, it's not our problem. Could Curator and Sai have been working together? What the hell were they doing then? What if something happened to him? That'd be ridiculous. You think Naomi attacked him? We would have heard that. I don't trust him. I think he might be trying to make us search for him so that we leave the room. Really? I don't think that makes much sense. Forget about him. No matter why he left, staying here is the right call. It's true. It eventually became clear Sai wasn't coming back. He left with our only method to measure the time, but it felt almost half an hour had passed. Seriously, what the fuck is happening? It's been hours. Nobody responded. Still next to me, Atsuki and Curator patiently waited. On the floor lay a tired Isla, while Ed in his face showed the most worry. Simultaneously, Atsuki and I looked at the ceiling. Did you hear something? I think so. What are you talking about? It sounded like someone just walked above us. And did you not hear the sounds coming from the crystal floor a few minutes ago? What? I didn't hear that. Ed hadn't noticed anything either. Everyone was on alert, but the sound had been very brief, immediately engulfed by the silence again. However, just a few minutes later, it repeated. There, did you hear it? This time we all nodded. Someone's on the second floor. Doesn't it sound more like more than one person? More than one? My mind jumped to the other Atsuki. Was he still here? We kept our hearing focused, but there was nothing else to hear. It took less time to repeat them before, but when it did, we were sure. More than one person was outside our room. It's Sai and Naomi. What the fuck are they doing? Editor grimaced at his language, but opted not to reprimand him. It has to be them. There's no way we missed anyone. Don't think about leaving. Whatever they're doing won't matter as long as we're here. It's not our business either. They're the ones who could be committing a crime. We didn't move, but during the following minutes, the same faint sound of footsteps was heard 2 more times. Whoever they were, they'd been moving through the building. At one point, it seemed as if the sound came from the crystal floor itself, but I didn't mention that. Who was there? Curator had reiterated that Naomi and Sai might have been trying to lure us out, but my curiosity went beyond that. Unmistakably, more than one person was outside our room. However, Naomi couldn't have been one of them. She was dead. Who then was the other person? With everything seemingly unchanging, my need to know had only grown larger. Could it have been Atsuki? I didn't think so. Had Katai been here the whole time? I didn't think so either. Then, was it someone who travelled through time? Whoever it was, they hadn't been heard in a while. What time is it now? Are we going to be here all day? It was getting unbearable even for me. Who knew where the supposed end was? Edna walked a few steps. I thought you might have wanted to stretch your body again, but that wasn't it. I have to go to the bathroom. Do you need to go to Isla? She shook her head. At the same time, the rest of us looked on with skepticism after what had happened with Sai. Don't worry, it shouldn't matter if only one of us leaves. I doubt I'll come across Sai or Naomi, but I'll be right back. But she wasn't. When a little while had passed, we realized that the same thing had occurred. And since she'd left, the sporadic sounds had come back. Someone had walked above us and on the crystal floor, but everything had been so faint. Eventually, even Isla began to look concerned, quietly staring at the empty door. When Sai hadn't returned, it had been very easy to assume that it was his choice. The case wasn't the same with Edina, though. Someone was there, someone who shouldn't have been there. Had they prevented both people from coming back to us? I couldn't take it anymore. Once again, the sounds had momentarily stopped, but I had to know who else was in the building. As I was convinced Arcado had been my killer, I didn't fear leaving the room anymore. I'll go too. Huh? I'll come back though. Sorry we've been here for too long. Before he could object, I walked to the door. I didn't exactly want to leave Atsuki behind, but I had no choice. I hadn't missed Arcado's sudden frown, but he kept his mouth shut as I passed by Isla. I looked both ways. Nothing about the hallway appeared immediately odd, but the darkness was imposing. The lobby door was open. Drawn to it, I tried not to make a sound. What the hell? Both bodies were there, near the hallway A door. Like before, my own looked at the ceiling with empty eyes, while drips of blood had stained the floor beneath Naomi's head. In addition, all the ceiling lights were on, even the ones that the alarm had disabled and hadn't been working in the morning. I knew that Sai had once tried to kill us, but those bodies couldn't have been his doing alone. Recalling the faint sounds I'd heard from inside the room, I slowly stepped to the other door. The bodies had been moved to the lobby, but there was no way the other Atsuki would have done that. Unable to look at them close, I hurried out. No way. Someone was far ahead next to the staircase. A pool of blood extended around a third fallen body, illuminated, lying in the illuminated zone. Edina, what's happening? My heart dropped like a stone. I looked away from her body, but I had to fight back tears. Had the killer been outside all along? It was too overwhelming. I couldn't bear it anymore, but the next thing I heard was footsteps coming from hallway B, causing my heart to drop even further. No. I ran as fast as I could, but I was too late. All I saw was Atsuki's figure disappearing into the lobby. I clutched my fists, desperately thinking about what to do. He had already seen both bodies, but there'd been no audible reaction. Suddenly, someone else came out of the crystal room. Before I hid myself behind the wall, I was able to see Arcado. What now? Do I have to hide again? Everything has gone down the drain so fast, I felt unable to move, as if my racing heart was using all my energy. Hey, where the fuck are all of you? Huh? I looked at the hallway again. As soon as I did, I saw Arcado coming out of the event room. Then he began to get closer. He might notice me if I tried to leave. What? Did he enter the staff room? I heard Arcado's short steps and then a door closing. But before I could think about it, I realized Atsuki was in hallway A, slowly approaching Edina. I had nowhere to hide. As a last-ditch effort, I dashed to the bathrooms, which I could see were empty. I slowly closed the door of the women's and locked it with the inner latch. I can stay here. Kitai was the one who had the key. Soon after I heard Atsuki's steps reach Edina's body, they ran up the stairs. What's he doing? Does he want to find whoever else is in the building? From Atsuki's point of view, only Sai or an extra person could have killed the three of them. My body wore different clothes, but there was no way he'd care about that, while unaware of what the Sekimeiya could do. I hated thinking about it. He'd found me dead, and I couldn't even imagine what I would have felt in his place. Once the steps had disappeared, I continued to pay attention so that I could hear what was happening in hallway B. But nothing did. Since Arcado had shut himself in a room, I'd heard no new movement. Is he still there? What about Isla? Could the door have been preventing the sound from reaching me? No, I'd heard Atsuki going up the stairs. And why did he only call for us once? He immediately went quiet. I didn't know where Arcado was, but the time when Atsuki had seen me in the different clothing was slowly approaching. I just had to wait a bit more to see whether my hopes had been in vain. How's this possible? Where did everyone go? I've been in the bathroom for several minutes, but the impossible silence hadn't ceased. We'd heard sounds from the crystal room. The floor couldn't be empty. Why was everything so quiet then? Should I go to the storeroom? I unlocked the door. I had the chance to go back there, so I slowly opened the way out. Is there really nobody here? The silence persisted once I stepped out. I wanted to run straight to the storeroom, but I noticed that all the doors in hallway B were closed. What about Isla? She can't see Edina's body. Wait. I approached room B4 as soon as that thought came to mind. After a deep breath, I twisted the doorknob. She's not here. Oh, I was right. The cabinet where the Sekimeiya had been was open. I stepped up to it and glanced inside. The Sekimeiya was still there and its colour was white. After staring at it for a while, I reached inside and took it out. protected by my long sleeves. It's cold. They must have travelled though, that's why the sounds stopped. But where were they? I was very confused. Why had the Sekimeiya been touched, and why had it allowed someone to travel? The temperature in the cabinet was considerably cold. I walked to the hallway and then to the staff room. Holding the Sekimeiya with one hand, I opened the door. He's not here. I'm pretty sure this is where he went. I should bring the Sekimeiya to the storeroom. Without thinking twice, I ran to hallway A. I looked both ways to confirm that nobody was there and gripped the doorknob. What? My jaw dropped and I stared at the lobby. Its door had been left open. Were my eyes betraying me? As I got closer, I knew that I hadn't imagined it. Where's Naomi? Only my own corpse remained on the floor. Although the red pool of Naomi's blood was still next to it, the body it belonged to wasn't there. The sensation that had once faded came back, reminding me of where I was. Inexplicable mysteries were bound to occur on December the 15th. I turned around trying to think it through was useless. Even though I don't know what I was waiting for, it was clear anything could happen. So going back to my own world wasn't far-fetched. I entered the hidden partition of the storeroom and dropped the Sekimeiya on the floor. Glowing in the darkness, its temperature was noticeably higher than after I'd taken it out of the cabinet. When I least expected it, a crucial piece of the puzzle fell into place. Wait, of course, how did I not realise this earlier? I left the storeroom. If what had been in the lobby had been a pool near the staircase, Edina's body lay in a sea of blood. That Edina, below the broken elevator. We'd never spoken to her. That was because she'd died. Did it make any sense? My idea was muddled, but it must have been on the right track. I had to make sure of something. I had to make sure Arcado and Isla weren't anywhere. Even though an immense amount of things didn't make sense, I thought I found one of the keys. As I dashed up the stairs, details reinforced that thought. It's going to be later than 3 o'clock. That fits perfectly. And the drop of blood that Atsuki and I saw in the lobby was exactly where Naomi's body left it before vanishing. When I reached the partitions, I stopped myself abruptly. There was something on the floor. Another Sekimeiya? Could this be the one I hid? I hovered my hand over it. An aura of heat surrounded it, so it was functional as well. When I picked it up, I felt that it was even hotter than I thought. Thanks to the thick clothes from the attic though, I was able to bring it with me. Did Atsuki see it? It must have been there for a while. Running up the floors, I saw that every elevator panel had been taken off. Had Arcado been responsible for that? I had no clue anymore. Eventually, I'd reached the door's attic. Every floor had been vacant, but the attic couldn't be. Didn't she say that she was colder in the new clothes? She was like, I'll tell them that I'll be warmer. It won't make sense because I'm actually colder now. And now you're saying they're thick. So they should be warm, right? It was open, so I could see the narrow staircase ahead. Why wasn't the door locked anymore? Furthermore, the key was inserted in the outer keyhole. Many footprints were pressed into the carpet. It didn't make any sense, but I didn't care. I also saw that the suitcase was no longer on the sofa. As soon as I stepped into the living room, I heard a noise coming from one of the bedrooms. I'd hidden the Sekimeiya 3 hours earlier. When I got closer, I could make out the sounds better, and I locked up. Atsuki was crying. I could see his torso on top of the bed, twitching rhythmically. He'd seen the dead bodies. My own death. I was still alive, though. I recalled what Sai had told us a long time in the past. According to him, the drop of blood in the lobby had been mine. He'd been wrong, hadn't he? It was Naomi's. In that case, why had he said that? And why had he been both right and wrong about my fate? I stepped back, careful not to make a sound. Perhaps I was a monster for that, but it was the only thing I could do. Atsuki had learned that the me of this world had died. I wanted to go back to mine, so I couldn't show myself, only to disappear again. Aside from Atsuki and me, the whole tower was empty. How could that be though? Where were Arcado and Isla? The answer to that question was one I already knew. They were in my world. They were the proof that going back was possible. At the point I was, an Arcado had appeared in the attic. His memories had differed from ours, and there had been a major distinction between us. He'd never seen Katai. It had taken me a while to process it, but everything he'd said had started to make sense. The events he described were ones I just lived through. He'd sympathized with us, and he'd been surprised to hear we'd found Naomi's body, but not that she'd died. After all, he'd killed her in the world I was in, hadn't he? Sai, I have no idea. He left the room earlier and didn't come back. What are you all even doing here? I mean what I said. Why aren't you all here? Why are you all here? We tried to stay put in one place together. Do you not remember that? No, I do. That doesn't answer my question though. How does it not answer your question? You and Sai escaped and now you come back. What? That's not true. I didn't escape. And Isla, what the hell happened to her? At the same time that Arcado appeared, Edna swore she'd heard Isla just outside the bedroom. Then the last person, Sai, where was he? The Sai who chased us with a knife, who was he? The one who left the crystal room a while ago was the one who could have seen my body in the lobby. Is that where he'd made a mistake? I went back to the storeroom and moved behind the wall. After dropping the Sekimeiya, I shifted my focus to the one I'd left there earlier. How did they reach that world? There can only be one answer. With the Sekimeiya. The cabinet was open, so they touched the Sekimeiya. Even Sai, after leaving the room, could have touched the other one. That's what brought them there. It has to be. How did I even get here in the first place? It was by touching the Sekimeiya. And why did Atsuki disappear from this world? It must have happened when Naomi touched the Sekimeiya. So then, why would it send me to another world as opposed to making me travel through time? I didn't know that. It didn't make any sense. However, I could be confident it would work. It had already been proven. After all, Atsuki had seen me on the crystal floor wearing the clothes I was wearing that very second. If I touched the Sekimeiya, I was guaranteed to go back. I didn't waste any more time. The darkness highlighted two glows, but my hand only approached one. It was the one Arcado and Isla must have used. Before I realised it, the glow disappeared after an instant of brief heat. Did it power off? I extended my hand more and understood that wasn't the case. It hadn't just powered off, the Sekimeiya wasn't there anymore. I tried to find the other one, but I couldn't. The darkness had become absolute yet again, and as I smelled the air, I felt I noticed the difference. Did it work? I didn't teleport. I touched the walls around me. I was still in the storeroom. Oh! I stood up and dashed to the door at the end of the corridor. When I hit it, I frantically felt its surface with my hand. It's not here, the handle's gone. I had come back. I really had. So whenever the Sekimeiya teleports, that's when you're changing world as opposed to travelling through time. Or something like that. I dropped to the floor, exhausted and overwhelmed. There were so many things that I didn't understand, but I'd been right about the most important one. I closed my eyes, letting out short breaths until they slowed down. What do I want to do now? I wasn't safe in the storeroom anymore. The handle was gone. So everyone should have known about the hidden section. It appeared I had two options to choose from. How did the world function? Even though I changed the past, I'd gone back to a reality that should have been erased. Just that fact made me doubt history could really be altered. However, it shouldn't have been possible. I could do it right at that moment. If I showed myself, I would change the events I'd lived. And that was what I had to choose. Whether to change the past or not. Do both options make sense? If I let everything repeat, the current version of myself will travel from the bathroom. That'll let me take her place once again. I'll have to let Katai die for that. And still, to do it, I couldn't merely stay put. I had to purposely let Atsuki see me to seal the start and end of the loop. Will that be how it'll work in the end? If I divert the events from the ones I remember, two versions of me will persist. Might also erase the Atsuki I met this morning, or myself, depending on what the consequences would be. Like I'd wanted, I had eventually returned to my target world by just waiting. The proper circumstances had aligned to fulfill what had to happen. That meant that if I just waited a while longer, I would arrive at the truth of Atsuki seeing me. I didn't know the exact time, so as I got as close to the hallway as possible. Can't really hear anything. I'm pretty sure someone should be here, no matter what the time is. We didn't look at the storeroom again when we left the attic, did we? I might really be able to stay here undiscovered. Had I always been there all along? I had a lot of trouble visualizing exactly what had happened. Trying to perceive any sound, I continued to press my ear against the wall. Once again, that led into minutes of silence, and as they kept passing, my concern only strengthened. Was I really back? Maybe the handleless door hadn't been the proof that I thought. This is probably the time that we were locked in the attic, but we know things happen down here while we're above. What's with the complete silence then? The Arcado appeared in the bedroom. He must have been the one I was with just now. If that's correct, Issa was actually in the attic as well when Edna heard her. So then, what happened to them? Why did we never find Isla, and why did Arcado disappear? We left Arcado on the lower level of the bedroom. A little while later, he disappeared. Furthermore, the chain hadn't been unset. It was a simple explanation. He disappeared with the Sekimeiya. And the ominous silence had gone on for a while. I decided to open both doors in front of me. Hallway A. Immediately, I noticed something that differed. The elevator button is in place. Is it correct that if I don't intend to change the past, it won't? If so, that'll be very convenient. I mean, I have proof that I'll still be here hours later, so I can do whatever I want as long as I don't purposefully change the past. I went up the staircase. Could Isla have been in the attic? I'd seen it with my own eyes. I had to confirm I was back there. I reached the attic's door. Next to every elevator on the way up, the metallic panels had been properly attached. I looked at the floor of the living room. Even though it had changed considerably, there were still recent footprints, and the empty suitcase was back on the sofa. Wait a second. I stared at my feet, after stepping in and remembering something Atsuki once said. Are these Islas? They can't be, right? And I think they're a bit too big. I couldn't make any sound. Slowly I stepped to the hallway and saw all I needed to see. There's no handle here either. That could have only meant one thing. As I stood there, we were all behind that door. So is Isla here? Like we'd once done, I took off my boots to reach the other bedroom while making the least amount of noise. It was empty. So was the kitchen. And the storeroom. She's not here. Put on my boots and closed the door. What the hell happened to her? Did she... Hold on. That's it. That's what happened. The identity of Isla's friend. I'd finally figured it out. Isla had died. So how could she have been alive within a month? Atsuki had already revealed that the recording hadn't been a trap. There were many things that I'd learned. Vice today had revealed that there had been a large travel at around 4 o'clock. That's how he'd appeared on the 24th of November, and it happened to fit with the approximate date Isla's friend had appeared. And that's not all. This also explains another mystery, Arkado's disappearance. There's someone else who appeared on the 24th of November, the person who escaped from a prison cell, who I have to assume was Arkado. At 4 o'clock, there was a very large travel, and everyone who got caught up in it appeared on the 24th of November. 3 people who travelled with Vice today, Isla and Arkado. Arkado appeared in a cell. It wasn't the same Arkado who we'd originally met in the morning. In a way, that explains some of the questions I had. Didn't Atsuki say that he'd seen Arkado once again? That was the version of him who had escaped the bedroom with Sai. Why did he appear in prison? And what did he do later? I don't know, but at this point I have no doubt Arkado was the Shin member trapped with us. And that's how both Islas met. Earlier, when we were in the bedroom, Edna and Isla's behaviour seemed different. That's because in that world her friend had never appeared. This is the solution to Atsuki's problem. After going to the past, she didn't recreate what she'd lived through. For her, that was happening for the first time. And I thought about it. All the things we'd heard of her friends had made sense. If she stayed calm in one place, nobody would be hurt. That's exactly what we did. We stayed in the crystal room and Isla never saw any of the dead bodies. She said that even though she didn't know how it would end or how long we'd stay here for, she'd wait for me at home. I see. The reason she didn't know how it would end is because she travelled to the past in the middle of the day, and she didn't know how long we'd stay because Katai hadn't been there to explain the alarm. It makes sense. Isla was told that 7 people would get trapped, and that it'd be 3 men and 4 women. That's because the other Isla was encountering Katai. There was one last thing Isla had told us. Her friend had reassured her that she would get in touch with the Sekimeiya. Get to touch the Sekimeiya. It must have meant that the Isla I'd just been with had touched it, in the crystal room. She had asked about it, but Arkado told her not to. When he left Isla alone, she must have taken advantage of it. That's why the cabinet had been opened, and why both of them had appeared in the world I was in. There's only one thing I find strange. If she appeared in this world in that room, she would have noticed something. A curtain would have appeared on the floor with Naomi's corpse under it. Did she see it? The Sekimeiya was inside the cabinet, so to touch it, she must have jumped inside. If she changed worlds inside the cabinet, she must have shut herself in there. And in this world, it would have been locked. I wonder what exactly happened. When did the recording come into play on all this? The sound came from the hallway. Did they open the door? Someone was there, but I could only hear footsteps. I made sure not to move, but I couldn't discern who it was. It has to be us. We just left the bedroom. They're still there. The sound wasn't reaching well where I was. There had been brief periods of silence, but I couldn't tell. I could tell the hallway wasn't empty. Soon the dry footsteps faded away. Did they leave? There wasn't only one person. I should go back to the crystal floor. I didn't like the idea of staying in the attic, but I could have been seen if I went all the way down. No matter who that was, I could probably make it down before them. I tried to open the elevator, but it didn't budge. Then as soon as I pressed the button, I felt a spark in my mind. Whoa! What the hell? Did this happen again? Dumbfounded, I stared at the button until it lit up orange. Inside the elevator, I pressed the lowest button. While I descended the building, I reeled from confusion. What had just happened? I opened the door on the crystal floor and dashed into the storeroom. I paid my utmost attention to behind the door. What was about to happen was very important. There it is. Someone appeared from the staircase. It's more than one person. It has to be the same people who just left the attic. I mean, it had to be us. It had to be us. Atsuki and me. Was that me? I just heard a voice. I wasn't sure, but they didn't speak again. Instead, they got closer to where I was. And the sound of their footsteps increased. They quickly decreased. Then they opened a door. It must have been the event rooms. What the hell? It has to be us, but it doesn't make sense. Something else had to happen, so I waited for it. I waited for something that didn't happen. Nobody else came from the staircase side. In fact, ever since the footsteps across the hallway, I hadn't heard anything. In just a few minutes, I began to doubt what should have been confirmed. I doubted I was really back in that world. I glanced at hallway A. Nobody was there, but confirming where I was shouldn't have been simple. Should have been simple. Nervous, I walked to the lobby door. I opened it slowly, creating the tiniest gap. As I'd thought, something was wrong. It was completely empty. My own body had disappeared, even though a single drop of blood remained near the door. Why? Why is nobody here? I went to the event room, where the door had been left open. The display cabinet was empty. There's no chance I'm not back, is there? I had to be. And a way to be sure was in hallway B, but something else grabbed my attention as soon as I stepped in. The door was open. It belonged to the furthest crystal room, B6. I approached it slowly and soon saw what was behind it. The Sekimeiya was just inside the room. Its colour was white and nobody was there. I could only frown as I walked up to it. That was where we travelled from, after leaving the attic. Many things indicated I was in that world. But not all. There was something that wasn't right, and it was very confusing. There were 2 Sekimeiyas here as well. That had to be right, and no matter what was happening, keeping one was a good idea. Still phased, I picked it up. The headache was coming back, so I left quickly and directed myself to the room that I wanted to inspect. B4, where I'd been for hours. When I opened the door, I found what I had expected on the other side. Naomi was on the floor under a curtain. There were bloodstains near her and on the wall too. Just what the hell is happening? The Sekimeiya I have right now is the one we touched in that crystal room, right? I just took it. So that's why we didn't find it later. Instead, we found it in a drawer. That must not have been the same one. Is that it? The structure of those events didn't make sense. It was a major contradiction. I approached one of the cabinets. Its side wheel was damaged. It's the same cabinet we saw that day. Actually, I should keep the Sekimeiya here. I was thinking of bringing it to the storeroom, but that could be risky depending on what happened. After all, why had I travelled back to that world? Due to an idea I had, I didn't want to stay near the Sekimeiya. It was for the same reason that I had to turn the wheel. Arcado set it to 5 degrees Celsius, but that might not have been enough, because the Sekimeiya still worked when Isla touched it. We found it set to 0 degrees, so that might be better. I said it wasn't enough at the time. I still couldn't easily believe what I was thinking. Had everything really happened as I'd said? I knew I had to be wrong about something, so what made the most sense was that I was mistaken about what time it was. After all, I had used the elevator. In the attic, I'd been so distracted that I'd hardly considered that using the elevator could have been heard. In fact, while I thought about it, I'd been blinded by an assumption. What if I didn't mean to change the past? Everything would repeat, and I was under no risk of being seen. So if everything was to repeat, it was guaranteed that I wouldn't be found. Therefore, using the elevator to go to the crystal floor was safe. That had been my unconscious thought process. But it had generated a major contradiction in my mind. Who would cause the noises I'd heard in the attic? I'd assumed that had been the time when we'd left the bedroom, but what had happened after that? Atsuki and I went down to the crystal floor and went to the event room. That's what I heard from the storeroom just now. Then we found the Sekimeiya in room B6, we touched it and travelled through time. We appeared back in the bedroom, and when we went to the lobby, before our original versions arrived on the crystal floor, we determined that we'd gone 5 minutes to the past. However, that didn't make any sense. There was another key detail to those events, the elevator. After leaving the attic's bedroom for the first time, we'd heard the elevator twice on the office floors. Then, when we travelled 5 minutes to the past, I pressed the button in the attic. That's why we thought that it had been us who'd called it from the attic and used it down. And just now, when I called the elevator, I thought, did this happen again? Did I once again call the elevator without realising that I was going to produce the sound that I'd already heard? That was flawed though. It couldn't have happened again because both elevator trips had been the very same. After Atsuki and I had touched the Sekimeiya and appeared in the bedroom, I called the elevator, producing the sound we'd heard before travelling. Now, right after the old versions of us went down, I called the elevator, producing the sound we'd heard. Which one was right, and which one was wrong? Only one could have been the truth. That was the reason why I was skeptical about my surroundings. I was in that world, but there had to be something I was mistaken about. If it was the time of day, everything made sense. If the sounds I'd heard in the attic hadn't belonged to our past selves, there was no contradiction. But was that it? It didn't seem like it. From the storeroom, I was pretty sure I'd heard my own voice, but that would have been when we checked the elevator to confirm that it had arrived from the crystal floor. If just now, when I took the elevator, I produced the sound we'd heard that day, then what the hell happened after we appeared in the bedroom? Just a few minutes prior, I'd confirmed nobody had been seen in the lobby. But that didn't make sense though, because the versions of us who touched the Sekimeiya in B6 should have been there. Who would cause the elevator's noises? No matter which one was correct, the other interpretation must have been completely wrong. I've been trying to combat my headache to understand what had happened. Even though both versions of things made perfect sense separately, it was impossible to reconcile them. From the story, I touched the Sekimeiya, and the world around me changed. Could something like that have happened when we touched it in room B6? That seemed like it would make sense, but there was a problem. After that point, Atsuki had seen me. That implied that he was still in the same world. I'd been caught up sorting everything out in my head when I heard someone just outside the door. Who's that? The sound only intensified, and soon the door was open. When I saw who was there, I rushed over. Edina, are you? Before I could finish, she fell to the floor. Her clothes were soaked in blood, and her expression had been vacant. I moved to shake her shoulder, but she didn't respond. What happened? Disconcerted, I closed the door. I didn't want to be heard, and I wasn't sure who else was there. However, I calmed myself down when I recalled what had happened. Right, okay, she's not dead. That was the room where we'd found her. She'd fallen in the same position we'd seen. I placed a finger on her neck and felt the pulse we'd missed. She said she'd been hit in the head, but who did it? All this blood can't be hers. Who could have had Edina? Akiro? Sai? Katai? However, the blood could have only been Katai's. The blood is fresh. Katai's already dead then. I was very lost. Everything was repeating, which meant I hadn't been mistaken. What I'd heard in the attic had been us leaving the bedroom. I doubted what to do. Sai and Akiro could have been very close by. In the other world, Akiro must have killed them, and in the one I was in, Sai was soon to chase us with a knife. No matter what, I couldn't let myself be seen, so going to the storeroom was dangerous. Katai and Edina left the attic together. They might have been attacked at the same time by Akiro or Sai. What about us? Where were our past selves? Good to my memories, we should have been in the lobby when I peeked into it, so I couldn't blindly trust what I remembered in that regard. Maybe I should go to the storeroom anyway. If everything will play out the same, I can't be sure I won't be seen. I can be sure. Wait, no, I don't have to. I thought a little ahead. When we found Edina, we failed to realise that she'd been alive. Due to the shock, we barely stepped into the room. I could leave, but given what I knew, I didn't have to. If I stayed next to the door, when it opened, our past selves wouldn't see me. Since Akito and Sai couldn't be anywhere, it was better not to move from there. Alright, we need to wrap this one up because we're out of time for this episode, but I don't know how this is going to turn out, frankly. I have no idea anymore. Or what Shidoya's in-game, what she's playing for now, because we could just leave, you know? Well, no, we can't now. We could have, though. I'm not sure what her in-game is at this point, but I guess we'll soon figure that one out. Maybe the end of chapter 3. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.